What's up, y'all? Roy here, and you are listening to the Clemens with a Z podcast. Now, one of the things I keep discovering through this podcast and conversations that I've had with people in the ICOC and other high control religious systems is that all of them can have very different doctrines, different practices, different language, and still teach us many of the same things about ourselves. So, my guest today is Audra Phelps. Audra Phelps was raised in a strict Mormon household. Her father worked for the church. She attended seminary every morning before high school, and from an early age, she was given a clear picture of what her life was supposed to look like: marry in the temple, have children, and follow the path that had already been laid out for her. But beneath all of that certainty, Audra was learning to distrust her own questions. In this conversation, we talk about growing up in the Mormon church, and we talk about the 10-year process that eventually led her out of the Mormon church, and the moment she looked in the mirror and said, "I'm not a Mormon," and the difficult work of discovering who she was after leaving. One of the moments that stayed with me in this conversation was Audra describing it how at 43 years old, she knew everyone else's favorite kind of pie but couldn't name her own. Because sometimes leaving the system is only the beginning. Then you have to learn what you like, what you believe, what you want, and whether the life you inherited is still the life you would choose. And I know a lot of my listeners might not be a part of the Mormon church, but if you were a part of the ICOC, I know that this conversation, you see a lot of similarities to what we dealt with, what we grew up with. So this conversation is about grief, motherhood, autonomy, and learning to approach your life with curiosity instead of fear. So here's my conversation with Audra Phelps. Let's get into it. Hey, we are live. Hello, Audra.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited
Good.
to have you on, excited to have this conversation. Um, I'm also just excited to talk to someone from a different faith structure that was as high controlled as ours was in the ICOC.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of similarities.
Yeah. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. So, you were part of the Mormon faith. How did you get involved with it?
I was born into it.
Okay.
So I was raised in a very strict Mormon household. My father actually worked for the Mormon church. There's not very many people that actually work and like that's their salaried career in the church,
Hmm.
but my father was one of them. So the church has what's called the church educational system. And he ran their seminary and institute programs in Southern California. And when I say seminary, this isn't like, seminary to become a priest. This was, so I went to seminary in high school. So high school kids go to church Monday through Friday every morning at 6 a.m.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I would go to the church building at 6 a.m. before school, and we would have an hour lesson, so from 6 to 7, and then we would go home and get ready for high school, and then go to public school. So
Wow.
he
So,
he ran that program.
okay, and so essentially your seminary was just like teaching you about Mormon faith and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like doctrinal
Okay.
classes. So it
Hmm.
was 4 years. It's been a while now, but it
Hmm.
was, 4 years. So for the 4 years of high school, and I believe every year focused on a different book, right? So
Hmm.
Mormons have additional books. So
Okay.
there was
Yeah.
like the Old Testament, then the New Testament, then the Book of Mormon.
Hmm.
And then many people don't realize we also had what's called Doctrine and Covenants, which was treated like scripture and was revelations received through the modern day prophets, starting with Joseph Smith.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we would study those books every morning, Monday through Friday before school.
Um, it's interesting that you mentioned how the Mormon faith has their own seminary. In a sense, we didn't have our own like seminary in the ICOC. Ours was more like there were sort of colleges that were started by leaders in our church to kind of help us. in evangelizing. Uh,
Okay.
they weren't accredited colleges or anything like that. But you would basically be learning more about Christianity, but it was through the lens of our leadership and like our sort of way of viewing what it meant to follow God.
And so this was after high school that you
Mhm.
would do
Yeah, it was
this?
after high school.
And was it like a full-time student, or was just something you did, a couple hours a week?
It was essentially like a couple hours a week. We
Okay.
had internship programs that you would go after, like when you were a senior or freshman in college, to help if you wanted to like lead a ministry or things like that.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds
But you
pretty
were doing
similar.
this, wow, this being up at 6 a.m. as a high school student to learn. What a what an adventure that must have been.
What an adventure. Yes, what an adventure. There was a lot of being there purely by obligation.
Sure.
And how hard could my father shake my bed to get me out of bed to then
Mm,
get to the church building by 6 a.m.?
wow.
But there was if you didn't attend, I mean, there it was definitely like looked down on, in the congregation because you attended with students in your same grade level. So all the
Mhm.
freshmen were in one class, the sophomores were in a class, juniors, and then seniors. So it was an expectation for sure to
Sure.
go. And I mean, and that's your hourly indoctrination before you go to public school. So it sets you on the straight and narrow path before you go expose yourself to the world.
Of course. I want to get into that. But before that, one thing I generally ask members and former members of the ICOC in the beginning is like, as a kid, what was your view or idea of what God was?
Oh, I had a very conflicting view about God.
Hmm.
Um, Also, in the Mormon faith, God isn't just one person, right? So, in the Mormon faith, the Trinity was actually three separate people. So, we had
Yeah.
Heavenly Father was a separate being, Jesus Christ was a separate being, the Holy Spirit was a separate being. But then we also followed the living prophet, right? So the Mormons believe that there's a prophet. So my view of God was pretty watered down, I would say,
Okay.
because there was messages coming from these different gods that we believed in. Um, and so I saw, I would get a lot of messaging like about Christ's love and how loving Christ is, and, come unto Jesus, accepting, loves everyone.
Mhm.
But then I would also, hear stories in the Bible or the Book of Mormon, or just stories that were told to us, more modern day stories about the wrath of God and fearing God. And so I always
Mhm.
felt like I had this really conflicting view of God. So is he all loving and accepting? Or is he full of anger if you don't follow him? And I felt like those two ideas were very conflicting.
Yeah, I could see how that would be very conflicting
Yeah.
as a child and to process. I think, was it challenging to process the idea of like, so you're saying like there was the Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So three specific beings.
Yes. Yes. They were three specific beings. And so, yeah, three
Hmm.
individuals. It wasn't one God, with the Trinity, with
Hmm.
oh, cute cat in the background. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm easily distracted by cats. Sorry. I'll have to edit that
It's
out.
fine.
um, yeah, so it was three separate beings. And so God was, we called Heavenly Father mostly. We referred to him
Hmm.
as Heavenly Father. And I saw Heavenly Father as more of the one that held the line, the one who had, the wrath of God, the one that brought down the floods on Noah because he was so angry. And then I saw Christ as like the warm, loving side. So the view of God in Mormonism even though Mormons believe in Jesus Christ, the view of God is different than most mainstream Christianity.
Got it. Wow. That's that's a lot to take in right away.
It is. It is a lot to
Yeah.
take in. And I don't think a lot of people realize the differences. And then also think it took me many years to kind of unravel it, right?
Hmm.
Because you hear about God and follow God and be righteous and follow the Lord, but it's very obscure.
Hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of things didn't logically make sense to me as a kid.
Hmm.
And if I would question it, I was told, "Oh, you don't have enough faith, and if you're questioning, it's because you're letting Satan, impress upon your heart, and so you need to pray more, and read your scriptures more, and go to church more."
Wow.
And that was really confusing to me because then it was like I felt like I couldn't question, I couldn't ask questions, there weren't
Hmm.
answers to my questions, and that questioning actually taught me to distrust myself. So anytime something bubbled up, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a bad person for even thinking that." And I would kind of just shrink.
Feels so seen right now. It was 100% like that for us too. You know, questioning. I don't think because for us in the ICOC, we thought we were right, everyone else was wrong, and any kind of question or concern, it was like pride. You're being prideful.
Right.
Um, and like when you're in it as a kid, like we were, you hear that so much, right? That distrust of yourself. I mean, it's like that's all I didn't want to trust myself for any decision, any thought,
Right.
any idea that I had.
Right. And so then you give all your power away to an
Hmm.
external authority. And
Sure.
when you start doing that as a kid, you don't know any other way. You don't, and so then you get to be an adult and you're just following this prescribed path and you don't even know how to make a decision for yourself because you've never done it. You feel like you've been told you have choice.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
when you look back on it, okay, you had choice, but one was, the pathway to heaven and the other was eternal damnation. So what kind of choice was that really?
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so you follow this path that you're told because you pushed yourself down for so long. You feel shame for doubting. You feel like something's wrong with you. It minimizes you to the point where you just feel so small and
Mhm.
so dependent.
100%.
Yeah.
It's exactly how I felt, exactly how I viewed myself. I don't know about you, but I feel like that sort of made its way into every little facet of my life,
Yeah.
from even decisions of what job should I take, or
Yep.
is this decision that I'm making right?
Yep.
But it's my decision, and but I don't know. I don't know if it's the right decision. I think, I mean, it's like that in my marriage or in anything. It's like I want someone else to make the decisions.
Yeah. And in a way, it feels safe to do that because then you're
Hmm.
kind of giving the responsibility to someone else,
Yeah, we're
right?
off the hook.
Yeah, you're off the hook.
Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. But you're out of practice of making decisions. You haven't done it since you were a small child. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of fear. And so yeah, you often go to like 10 people. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
Or you pray about it and you give your decision making power away, really.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to going back to high school. I just think about what was it like to you go to these seminary the classes in the morning and then you're off to a public school. I mean, were you at a school where there were a lot of Mormons, or was it just by yourself, or what
No,
was
there
that
were
like?
there were other Mormons. There was a small pocket of us. I
Hmm.
always felt like an outsider, even like I didn't always feel like I belonged with the other Mormons either. So
Hmm.
most of my friends weren't Mormon. But I was definitely taught like an us versus them
Hmm.
and um that I was a little bit better. than everybody else because I had the
I'm not laughing.
truth.
Just so were we. It's just so
Yeah,
funny.
right. Yeah, like you said, this was the one truth, the one
Hmm.
way. Like that's what we thought too. Like this is the one truth, the one way, and I had this heavy responsibility to
Hmm.
be an example, to be an example of happiness and perfectionism, and that I had a duty to convert all the people around me to my faith.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I had to be, I was on stage all the time, to be honest. I didn't
Hmm.
ever feel like I could just be open and vulnerable and be myself. It felt very performative all the
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
And, as I probably, if you ask any of my friends from high school, I'm pretty sure all of them will tell you at one point I gave them a Book of Mormon. Because there was a lot of guilt if you didn't, because
Yeah.
what if I was the one opportunity they're going to have in this life and I didn't act on it, then I'm responsible for them not knowing the truth. So there
What
was
a.
a lot of pressure as a high school kid, and I it was definitely like an elitism. I knew better than everybody.
Mm.
And I even I remember, this just came to my mind, but I was supposed to go to a Spice Girls concert with some
Uh-oh.
friends in high school,
Uh-oh.
and it was on a Sunday.
Mm-mm.
And I had won these tickets on the radio. Like this was where you call in and you're caller number
Yeah.
7, right?
Hmm. Way to go that you got it.
I totally got it. Anyway, so I remember I was so excited, but the concert was on a Sunday. And so I had to ask permission to go to a concert on a Sunday. And my dad was like, "No, you can't go to a concert on a Sunday." And I was like, "Come on, I won these tickets on the radio. It's not like I'm out every Sunday doing something. This is the only opportunity, blah 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 blah." And I'll never forget this. His response was, "We are a peculiar people," which means that when Christ comes again, he will know us because we stand out.
Mm.
And how you stand out is by following all of his expectations for you in this life, like observing the Sabbath day. But that really stuck with me, like a peculiar people. I'm supposed to be different from everyone. I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to belong in this world.
Hmm. We would say like you're in the world but not of the world.
Yep, we used to say that too.
Yeah. Um, was it like during the day? Like, were you gonna miss a service or something, or was it just because
it, I
Sunday is
was
like a sacred day?
it was just because Sunday was a sacred day. So the Sabbath day for us, church was 3 hours. So
Good
we would,
Lord.
so I would we would have church for 3 hours, but then the rest of the day was supposed to be, a day of rest, a day of scripture reading. We couldn't watch regular TV shows. We couldn't go out shopping. We couldn't go to restaurants. It was just home with your family all day.
Yeah, I got in big trouble for going to a Dave Matthews Band concert on a Wednesday night when we had a Wednesday night devotional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. We took I remember we used to take communion or not communion or contribution or we call it contribution or your tithe, and we would give it every Wednesday. This was when I was in the campus ministry, and I even sent my contribution in with a friend, but yeah, I got in big trouble for I had like 4 or 5 phone calls during the concert. People were like trying to get me to come to church, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of that. Like, and then even
Mhm.
as an adult, when I was married and had kids, and I was really questioning, because I questioned for about 10 years before I actually left. But, if I didn't attend church on Sunday, or if I left early, if I left after the first hour and didn't attend the second and third hour, somebody would show up on my doorstep that evening, with a plate of cookies. well meaning, but really quite intrusive and say, where were you?
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we would do the same thing. So when you say I mean, I've got to ask this question. So 3 hours, was it like an hour of worship and then an hour message and then an hour of like what was the service like that it
So
was 3 hours long?
the first hour was called sacrament meeting, and that was
Hmm.
everybody all together. And then so you would have the church leaders up on the stand, and then you would have speakers. So members of the congregation would speak. You were assigned to speak on a Sunday. So you would listen to a message. The church leaders would give you a theme. Maybe the theme was tithing or chastity or, whatever it might
Hmm.
be. So you would have sacrament meeting the first hour. The second hour was Sunday school. So
Hmm.
that is where men and women were together, divided, adults and then young adults and then children. And you would have like a doctrinal lesson during Sunday school. And then the third hour, men and women were separated. So the men would go to their priesthood lesson that was male specific lessons, and the
Hmm.
woman would go to what was called Relief Society, which was female centric lessons.
That's a lot for a wow.
Yep. And then, we also had like a Wednesday night, youth group or whatever, and then
Hmm.
firesides in the evenings, which were more talks. It was usually just talks, and then social activities as well during the week.
Hmm.
So, one thing the Mormon church is good at is their sense of community, right?
Hmm.
Anywhere you move, you instantly have a community, you have a friendship group, you have something to do. There's a lot of
Hmm.
social activities, and they are good at taking care of their own. Someone has a baby, they'll organize meals to be delivered, or you're moving, they'll help you load the moving truck. So the fellowshipping was they're very good at that.
Yeah, we had a good sense. You had a good sense of community with us as well. We had our Sunday services, our Wednesday devotionals. In college, we would have a lot of Friday night devotionals. Um, and then throughout, you would have we call them Bible talks. I'm
Mm,
assuming when you say fireside, it's just kind of like a small group, and
yep,
it's not super long, but kind of like a hangout with like a scripture and a talk kind of
yep,
thing.
yep, exactly.
And then, but we were, constantly around someone, or I told someone it felt like I was always driving to something or from something.
Yeah. Yeah, it keeps you very busy,
Hmm.
really busy. And you know, when I was really starting to question and I started to find some different social groups outside of church,
Hmm.
that's when I really started to see the contrast in the relationships, right? All I had really known was my church relationships. And except for, in high school when I had friends who weren't Mormon, but it was really more about me trying to convert them. But as an adult, now I'm starting to question and I'm starting to have friends outside, and like I went back to school as a young mom to get my degree, and I'm making
Hmm.
friends in my science classes and really connecting. And then as a way of dealing with the anxiety and depression that I was dealing with as a young mom, I joined like an exercise group to train for different running events. And I started to see the contrast in those groups. So like my my church group, I always felt like I had to sort of stifle myself, and
Hmm.
I had to perform, I had to fit the mold, I had to say what was right in the right situation. I was afraid of judgment. But then these other groups outside of church, I felt like I could take a deep breath and I could be open, and they really were connecting with me out of curiosity, and there wasn't this judgment, and I didn't have to perform. And that was kind of one of the things in my slow erosion of leaving that made me go, wait a second, why is this so different? Why are these
Hmm.
relationships so different?
Did you feel like there was always eyes on you, kind of thing?
Always,
Hmm.
always eyes on me. I mean, like I said, if I didn't show up to church on Sunday, somebody would show up with a plate of cookies, and it was like, you were keeping tabs on me? Like you knew that I
Hmm.
wasn't there. And, even I went to BYU, so the church university in Utah. I went there for a couple years. I didn't graduate because I got married first. Well, and I got kicked out. But
I was gonna ask you that because I watch all of these videos. I've heard people talk, and they're like they're going to BYU essentially to find a partner.
yeah, it's called the MRS degree.
Yep, the
Yeah.
MRS degree. I felt that a lot. I was an educator for a long time, and when I was in college, it felt like a lot of the future teachers, or they were doing it for it was just going to be an MRS degree. I
Yes,
felt that as well.
exactly.
Yeah, I heard
Exactly.
this guy interview some college students at BYU, and he said, "Would you rather get your degree or get a ring?" These girls, a ring is like an engagement ring, and the girls were like, "I would much rather have the ring."
Yeah, I mean, because as a girl growing up in the Mormon faith, as a small child, I was told, like, that is it. That is the end
Hmm.
goal as a
Yeah,
woman, is to get married in the temple. Nothing else matters as long as you are married in the temple. And you're you're primed to be a mother. You're told even as a child that there are souls in heaven that are destined for you to, and it is my job to give them an earthly body, to birth them and bring them to this earth. And as a child, I'm told that,
yeah. Hmm.
right? So then that's that I'm very like I have my blinders on, right? I've got tunnel vision. Like that's it. The
Yeah.
goal is to get married in the temple and have children and be a mother. Period. The end. And
Hmm.
so I was encouraged to go to school, but for a different purpose than men. Number one, my purpose was to find a husband, right? And then
Hmm.
if I did end up getting a degree, it wasn't really to have a career. It was just so that I had a backup plan in case something were to happen to my husband. It wasn't meant for me to actually work.
Yeah. I'd like to say that's surprising, but it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and so that's what I did, right? I went to BYU. I found my husband, who I'm still married to now,
Hmm.
25 years. So we're one of the lucky ones who left the church but stayed together. And so I followed that path. I got married. At age 20, I started having kids right away. I had my oldest when I was 22, and I had three kids. But then when my youngest was about 3 or 4, I really started struggling with severe anxiety and depression that I mentioned before, because
Hmm.
and to the point where I was having panic attacks like almost every night. And I couldn't figure out why, because it was like, I'm checking all the boxes. I'm doing everything that I'm told is going to make me, give me eternal salvation, and it's going to bring happiness. And I'm raising children in the church, and I'm reading my scriptures, and I'm praying, and I'm doing all of the things, but I'm completely miserable. And looking back, I know that that was my body screaming at me that I was in a life that was not mine, that was controlled from the outside, and it was not aligned with who I really was. So that was kind of the beginning of my conscious exodus.
Hmm.
And then it took about 10 years to really walk away.
Yeah. What, I think it's interesting when I think about us. I mean, us is like the ICOC, but also us that we're in these religions. In a lot of ways, we were imprisoned in public.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Like what I'm trying to
It
say is
does.
like we were existing and living our lives in the world. Like we were going to schools, we were like driving our cars around because a lot of times I think when people think cults or these kind of organizations, they think like a place that's somewhere else. Like, I don't know, like Waco, Texas or Jonestown. Like you go there, but for me, in the ICOC, it felt like I was in prison. It was all like inward imprisonment. Like it was like with, for example, like you mentioned with like the community and like how you were always at a thing, but then there are always people talking to you and like trying to keep you busy and trying to get you to make sure you're on the right path. And so, sure, we were out and about, but we didn't have autonomy,
No,
right?
no, not at all.
And so I guess as I'm listening to you talk, it's almost like it's the same that I was feeling, I was thinking and experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's like a mental prison.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like a mental prison because it looks like you're free. It looks like you're, living a great, successful life,
Hmm.
but you don't have much control
Hmm.
over your life and over your beliefs and over your lifestyle and your decisions. And it starts really small. I mean, in the Mormon faith, we couldn't even drink coffee.
Wow.
Why?
Yeah.
That one never made sense to me. And I got all sorts of weird explanations that never made sense to me, and like people
Yeah.
could be, drink a 6 pack of Diet Coke, but we couldn't have coffee. Like I didn't
Wow.
understand. And what I was told eventually was it's not really about the health benefits. It's just a way for you to prove your obedience to God. And it was like, oh, so I can totally see what you're saying. It's like you are in a mental prison because if
Hmm.
everything is about just follow what the church says as if it's a commandment from God and follow obedience even if you don't understand it. You don't have to
Hmm.
understand it, you just have to follow it,
Yeah.
right? And so
Hmm.
then there's no critical thinking,
Oh,
and so there you really have no control.
yeah. I was telling someone all of the scars that we have, or most of them, are on the inside.
Yeah.
And that's harder to talk about and it's harder to prove sometimes, I feel.
It is, and I think when you first walk away,
Hmm.
when your eyes are opened and it takes so much bravery to walk
Hmm.
away, especially when you have family and friends who are in it.
Hmm.
And I think when you first walk away, you still have so many hidden beliefs and mindsets and identities about yourself that are there in your subconscious, like running the show,
Hmm.
right? And one of the things that I still had was this real us versus them, right versus wrong, right? So like dichotomous or binary thinking, right? It was either
Hmm.
in or out, all or nothing, good or bad. There was never an in between. And so I still had this mentality when I walked away from the church. So then it became okay, well, if I've walked away and I'm making the right choice, then everything else is wrong,
Hmm.
right? And that took a long time. It actually took me moving overseas. So I moved overseas before I left the church. But it took this exposure to a lot of different beliefs. It took me getting this separation from the church to see other people and see other beliefs and see how happy they were and how convicted they were in their faith, to realize that it's not right versus wrong. It's everybody makes a different choice, and that's okay. We can all have the
Hmm.
freedom to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm. Um, so it was when you were an early mother, was when you were finding the cracks in all of this and thinking I might need to leave or things don't make sense anymore.
Things didn't make sense anymore, but I didn't quite understand why. I felt like something was wrong with me.
We always go there first, don't we?
Yeah, something must
Yeah.
be wrong with me,
Hmm. I'm
right?
not
Not that,
getting it right.
yep,
All these other people seem happy. They've done it
yep,
this way, but
yep. I'm
what am
not
I
good
doing wrong?
enough. I'm
Hmm.
not good
Yep.
enough. I'm not faithful enough. I'm
Oh,
not following the rules perfectly
yep.
enough. Um,
Hmm.
so at first internalized it as something is wrong with me.
Mhm.
Um, but I did start to make some small shifts. Like, I, when I was really struggling with the anxiety and depression as a stay at home mom, and I desperately wanted to work, but I was told multiple times, no, your place is in the home.
Mhm.
If you start working, you're going to take away your husband's role from him.
Oh my gosh.
And so, but I knew something needed to change. And so I did go back to school to get my degree because I knew I felt so dependent and I knew I needed some sense of independence. So I was brave enough to kind of go against the grain and say, okay, I'm going to go back to school. But I wasn't quite aware enough of myself to make a decision on what career path I chose that was based on what I really wanted to do.
Mhm.
So I decided to become a teacher because nobody would look at me sideways at church if I was a teacher because I'd have the same schedule as my kids. I'd have summer breaks off. They wouldn't have to have daycare. So I wouldn't necessarily be shirking my role as the stay at home mom. So, I did really like science. So I decided to be a high school biology teacher. That was the career that I went into. Um, but then it was just kind of these little steps as I went into the career field and as I found success and as I started to gain some independence and now I'm making my own money and now I have coworkers and I'm having these amazing conversations and friendships with coworkers. It just slowly started to progress to me starting to feel the confidence to question. I don't think I had
Mhm.
much confidence before that, and to look at the things that the church was telling me, the history of the church, and the way it was making me feel.
Mhm.
That was a big one, was to actually start to pay attention to how I was feeling, you know? And then, and then we found out about American private schools overseas, international schools. And my husband was an elementary school teacher, and I was a high school biology teacher.
Oh, well, I was an elementary school teacher.
Oh, really? Perfect.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, no, it's all good. Love teachers. I mean,
I just get excited when there's a male who was an elementary school teacher.
yeah, that's
That's
my
all.
husband. You guys would
Hmm.
be besties. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
He's still an elementary school teacher.
Wow, good
So,
for him.
yeah, it's his career. He's very passionate about it, actually, which is great.
Wow.
We need more
Right on.
teachers like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, but so then we moved overseas with our kids. And, like I mentioned before, that's where I now have this physical separation. Like I'm not caught up in the daily minutia of it. I don't have a church calling, which is basically, a volunteer unpaid church job that can sometimes take up full-time hours. So I don't have a church calling. I don't have activities to go to every night of the week. I don't have people showing up at my door if I don't come to church on Sunday. So it really gave my brain the space to process
Hmm.
and to think through things. And like I mentioned before, I'm now exposed to all these different beliefs and cultures and nationalities and religions. I'm working in a school that has kids from 40 plus different countries. And I remember thinking to myself, how arrogant of me to come into this new country and to tell them that what they believe is wrong and that they have to follow what I believe. I could never do that because because who am I to say that their beliefs are wrong, because they seemed actually so much happier than I had ever been in the church.
Can I ask you real quick? So you're having this now, but did you go on a mission?
I did not go on a mission.
Okay.
My husband did. I did not go
Okay.
on a mission because I got married at age 20. So in
Okay.
the Mormon church back then, so in the late 90s, early 2000s, I got married in 2001. Um, Girls couldn't go on a mission until they were 21.
Okay.
Boys went on a mission at age 19. Now,
Okay.
why the difference in age? Well, because the priority for girls was to get married. And so if you weren't married by age 21, then I guess you could go on a mission.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've only ever seen I only ever see guys on the mission thing. I've seen numerous Mormon guys in parking lots and stuff. I've
Right.
had interactions with see my father-in-law sort of was doing a bunch of yard work. He needed a bunch of pavers
Mm.
being laid and had some Mormon guys come help, and the girls that were on mission as well, they came. It was one day, and he had me and my wife come over to eat because they were eating lunch, and so I got to see and experience them because they were serving in the sense of they were trying to get my father-in-law and his wife to come, but they had no intentions. They just really enjoyed the fact that they had free labor.
Yeah, there's always an ulterior motive when the missionaries show up and help you with yard work. It's to
Oh
show
yeah.
you how great they are and how
Hmm.
giving they are so that you'll come to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, so you're overseas and you're seeing
Yeah.
all this. Was it just kind of like a hard pill to swallow? What did you feel like, I don't know, like the ground that you were walking on wasn't stable anymore kind of thing? Because that's how I was feeling as I was realizing the earth, just having the thought of like, we can't be the only way. Like,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
that's exactly how it was. Like I remember going to all of these amazing places, like a Hindu temple in India or
Hmm.
a Catholic cathedral in Europe or a Zoroastrian fire temple or a Muslim mosque. And like they would feel really spiritual and
Hmm.
sacred and peaceful. And that was confusing to me because I was like, wait a second, this is not how I was told that this would feel. I
Yeah.
was told that this would feel dark and it would feel heavy and that other
Hmm.
religions don't have the full truth and you'll never be as happy as the Mormons who have the full truth. But yet, honestly, in these some of these other places, I remember having more of a spiritual experience than I ever had in the Mormon temple.
Hmm.
And so I started going, okay, if that's not true, what else isn't true? But and now my
Hmm.
brain had like evidence, like a familiar feeling of what it feels like to recognize something that wasn't true, something that I was told that wasn't true, so I could start to sort of analyze other things and go, well, okay, that's not true either because that feels the same way that that felt, you
Hmm.
know? And so it really rocks your world. Like
Hmm.
all of your certainty, it's just ripped out from under you. And in a lot of ways, when I walked away, my kids were ages 9, 11, and 13. So I was still raising kids. And I remember feeling like I was growing up alongside of them all over again because
Hmm.
I now had to
Oh.
see the world through totally different lenses.
Hmm.
And I felt like a teenager with my teenage kids. They're I, when they were teenagers, we were living in Eastern Europe in Azerbaijan, where the drinking age was 16. And I was still like figuring out what I thought about alcohol alongside my kids who were now at a legal drinking age. And it was like, oh, let's figure this out together. Like that felt it felt really bizarre because I had this definition of what a good mom is, and I felt like
Hmm.
a good mom should be someone who has certainty and who knows the right way and who guides their kids on the right path and is stable and grounded for their children, and I didn't feel that way at all.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What a wild thing. And I was thinking what a beautiful thing to be experiencing together. Um, but
Yes and no.
I'm also seeing how I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. And I mean, I would probably have been just as scared, just as freaked out, just as worried, all of those things.
now I
you
can
know?
look back and I can see how that was such a great opportunity
Hmm.
to open up the lines of communication with my kids,
Hmm.
which I did frequently. But there were some times when I felt like I needed to figure it out for myself before I talked
Yeah.
to my kids about it, and I would kind of withdraw,
Hmm.
and I was used to hiding myself, and so I would kind of hide myself for a while until I feel like I had it figured out, and then I would talk to my kids about it. But like with the drinking example, that one actually ended up being a really great bonding experience with my kids because I remember my daughter coming to me and saying, "Okay, I'm going to go out with some friends and there's going to be alcohol." But in Eastern Europe, like, you know, teenagers will have a drink and it doesn't mean that they're going to go out and get plastered, right? I feel like since it's not this forbidden thing for so long, they handle it much more maturely than in the United States.
Yeah.
And so I had to really kind of sit through what's my belief around this. Do I think that her drinking alcohol is a sin? No. Do I think that her drinking alcohol is not healthy? Well, yes. So, but how can we come up with some ground rules together where she doesn't feel like this pressure to say no or a pressure to say yes, and she can make a decision that's hers? And so that was actually a really empowering thing, I think, for us as parents and for our kids, was to come together and let's talk about ground rules. I'm not going to just give you the ground rules, but let's come up with them together. Let's come up with what we think about this together.
I mean, I could speak for hours and hours about that right then. Just the idea of exposure for kids, the idea of conversations with kids at an early age. I think it really does wonders. I think exposure for children is such, I don't mean exposure is like we're going to go throw beer in their faces and
Right.
stuff, but just exposure to the world, exposure to different
Yeah.
people, like different ideas, different thoughts, different everything. Um, I think I'm more a fan of that because of my how structured my life was and how like sheltered it was and what it did to me. Um, because you're mentioning you're experiencing all these with your kids. I mean, I know I'm 45, but in a lot of ways I feel 25,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. So
Yeah.
much.
Hmm.
So much in a lot of ways. Even now, I go to different like work events or social events, and I feel like I don't quite know as much as everybody else in the room.
Hmm. Just
You know?
fake it. Hmm.
Yeah,
So many
exactly.
conversations. I'd be laughing and don't understand why people are laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, like
There's
some of the 90s music that was forbidden to me, and
hmm.
people my age are talking about it, and I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't allowed to listen to that rapper. Or I don't know that song because he said horrible words," and so
Yeah.
there's this like,
Hmm.
oh, you start to feel like an outsider again.
Yeah, my biggest thing was oversharing. I
Oh.
overshare because we just talked about everything with everyone.
Hmm.
And so like I'm get really insecure when I'm like talking because I'm wondering if I'm saying too much. It's like everything's an open book. I'll just say whatever. And some people find it like, a breath of fresh air that someone can just talk, but people in the real world don't share as much as we used to share in our church, you know?
That's interesting.
Yeah, we had
That's
discipling
interesting.
partners. That was our thing. And
Okay.
it was basically just someone who oversaw you and you were supposed to meet with them once a week to, they're supposed to like call you higher, but really it was just a way to like keep you in line, make sure you're thinking the right way. You're not like wavering, things like that.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I feel like I was the opposite when I first walked away from the church. I think I always had this fear of judgment, the fear of saying something wrong.
Hmm.
That even when I left, I didn't want the attention on me. I didn't want people asking about my background. I didn't want people asking about what I believed because then it would inevitably bring up, well, I was raised Mormon.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I didn't want to talk about it. And one was the fear of judgment, but the other
Hmm.
was, you know, often people didn't know very much about the Mormon faith. So as soon as they found out I was Mormon, they would start asking me all these questions. And then
Hmm.
I found myself explaining it almost like defending it, like I was still in it. It
Yeah.
was like Mormonism 101 with Audra Phelps, you know? And,
Yeah.
and uh, and that was confusing to me because it felt like I was defending a church that I had left, and I was
Hmm.
still, trying to reconcile that. So I would often find myself in the beginning kind of shirking away from social situations because I also hadn't done a
Yeah.
lot of healing yet. I didn't know what the healing process looked like. I felt like I was just kind of throwing darts in the dark, trying out different things. Okay, who am I? What's going to stick?
Yeah.
Right? Um, so I would definitely was the opposite. I undershared. I always, when someone asked me a question, I would give a really vague answer and then I would hit him back with a question about them.
Yeah. I was so I don't so my mom was a clown growing up, and
Like an
so
actual clown.
like an actual clown, and so it was
Oh,
always I used to always love to tell people that because it was just always funny to me to watch their reactions. And so like when I moved, like so I moved from Georgia, that's where I lived most of my life, to Virginia, and it would just be like I'd meet new people and they'd be like, "Yeah, so you're from Atlanta, what was life like?" And I would just be, "Yeah, I was part of a cult. My mom was a clown." And it would just like in some ways I always just thought it was funny and just interesting, and it just kind of broke down walls right away. But
mm.
that's my oversharing anyway. But
I think if I had approached it like, yeah, I was in a cult, then I probably would have had a different reaction. It would have broken the ice right away.
it's like it's kind of like if I if I'm like saying it first and owning it in a sense, there was
Mm,
like a disarming thing that it did for it. And the more that I'm
mm,
just like, yeah, I mean, I was a part of a cult, it was this. And it kind of takes some of the power away
mm.
from it. It's helped.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I how I do it. And it's almost like I get to control the narrative more than the other person gets to.
I could see that. I could see
So
that.
it's like a defense mechanism.
Yeah, I could see that. I think for me too, now I can talk about Mormonism, obviously, as I'm
Hmm.
here on the podcast.
Yep.
But I think before I had done a lot of internal work in becoming really secure in who I am, what I believe, and becoming the own authority over my life. Before I got to that point, it it was like if I talked about it, it was painful. And I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to
Hmm.
face the pain because it would remind me of the grief. Would remind me of the family relationships that weren't there anymore. It would
Yeah.
remind me of my confusion. And I wasn't ready to face some of those emotions.
Mhm. That's fair. I get that too.
Yeah.
100%. Um, I'd like to go back a little bit because when you were talking about the uncertainty you were feeling, if this wasn't real, or like what is certain, like what is certain, I think that's what you said, kind of. Um, what kept you moving forward instead of back? Because a lot
Mm,
of people, if this isn't real or if this isn't true, then what else is not true? Like that's scary for people, and most people, I mean, no judgment to that, to them who do that, they just stay because it's safe. And
sure.
that's a real thing
Yeah.
that is fair, and I would never shame someone for that because I
Right.
get it. But what is it? Was there something that clicked with you that kept you moving towards it instead of hiding away?
Um, yes, my kids.
Really?
Because as I started to uncover, okay, if that wasn't true, what else isn't true? and it started bringing up a lot of emotions, and I was realizing how small it kept me and how controlled it kept me and how much shame I felt over the things that I
Hmm.
was taught that were that I thought were true that weren't.
Hmm.
I knew I never wanted my kids to feel that way. And so that's kind of what kept me going was I don't want my kids to feel the shame that I felt for having
Hmm.
normal questions. I don't want my kids to feel like they don't have freedom of choice. I don't want my kids to feel like they have to push their questions down because they have to, make their will the Lord's will or follow someone else's path. I So that is what really kept me going was how can I create a different upbringing for my kids so
Hmm.
they don't ever feel those feelings and they feel totally independent and secure in who they are. So that's what kept me going was I think protecting my children and ensuring that they had a different experience than I had.
Right on.
Yeah.
Crazy how kids do that to you.
I know. if it was just me, if it was just me, I don't know. I think at some point the truth would have gotten too loud.
I I get that.
But
I
I
just go ahead. Keep
well, I was
going.
just going to say I do see what you were saying before about sometimes you question and you start to step away, but then it's scary, it's uncertain, you don't know where this is going to go.
Hmm.
And your your well-worn pattern is to always look for permission from someone
Hmm.
else before you do anything. And that's for better or for worse, it's familiar and it feels safe to your nervous system,
Hmm.
right? And so you start to question, but then your brain wants to keep you safe. And what's going to keep you safe is going back to giving your authority away to an external source and looking for permission.
Yeah.
So, and some people find a lot of happiness in the beliefs within these systems. Like you said
Hmm.
before, I respect everyone's choice. I think there's different reasons for staying and different reasons for going. Um, I think I've also really valued honesty. That's always been a character trait of mine. I've really valued honesty, and I would not have been honest with myself if I had stayed.
Yeah. Hmm. I didn't have kids at the time. I just couldn't ignore what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I knew I was stepping away from everything and everything that was known to me, but I just my body was just screaming to get out, to try. You can't. This can't work. There was so much hurt that I hadn't dealt with, so much pain, so much sadness, and then I'm getting these tastes of the world that were like good, like you were saying, like I was having these interactions with people and ideas and books and thoughts, and it was feeling so good. And I was like, I don't know what's on the other side, but I just gotta see what's over there right now, and I'm glad I did. But I'm glad that you found, the path forward. So what was the final straw? Was the leaving this one thing, like one Sunday you're going to Mormon church and the next week you're not, or was it just
No, I
little
mean
by little?
it was a slow erosion for about 10
Okay.
years, but there was one culminating event, like, the item I put on a shelf that made the shelf break.
Yep.
And at this point, I had been overseas for about 2 years. I was really opening my eyes to a lot of different beliefs. I was really, kind of starting to experiment with different things and figure out the world. And um, it was November 2015, and the church came out with a policy that I had a real visceral reaction to. So I was now learning to listen to myself. I was now
Yeah.
learning,
Hmm.
to pay attention to the signals my body was giving. I wasn't pushing it down anymore. And so the church came out with a statement that was very anti-LGBTQ. And I remember the moment I read it, I felt like I wanted to throw up. And they framed it as like love and protection of children, and I saw right through it. Like for the first time in my life, the church came out with something, and I didn't just blindly go, "Oh, well, okay, they know better than me. I guess I just better have enough faith and accept it." For the first time I saw it, and I was like, "No. I don't agree with this. This is wrong." And I I snapped in that moment in a good way, right? And I remember I was in my living room. We were living in Kazakhstan at the time, and I walked upstairs, went in my bedroom, shut the door. I was still wearing the Mormon garments. That was kind of the last holdout. The Mormon garments, for your listeners who don't know, is like the special Mormon underwear that you get when you go through the Mormon temple, and you're supposed to wear them all the time and not take them off. It's like a really big deal. And so I had them on because there was a lot of shame if I were to take them off. What does that mean about who I am? But in that moment, I remember I took them off. I didn't rip them, I took them off.
Hmm.
And I looked at myself in the mirror and I just said, I am not Mormon. Like it was like such certainty that I did this symbolic, physical, you know, action of taking off the Mormon garments and just saying, I am not Mormon. And I remember feeling so, like, I say that it felt like the whole world opened up into a million stars. Like, finally, like I just felt free. Like I had actually taken off the thing that was keeping me imprisoned, keeping me small.
Hmm.
And yeah, that was the moment I walked away for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. And then shortly thereafter, I went and told my husband. And then it was like, okay, then what does this mean? Right. I
Hmm.
know what I'm not. I'm very clear on that. But I have to now figure out who I am. I have to rebuild. I have to start over. And that was really scary, especially because I had three little kids that I was, had stewardship over. And I didn't even know what I thought about anything from drinking coffee to if there was a God in heaven.
Yeah. Well, what did you do? What got you to here?
Oh
What were the things
gosh.
you did? I mean, that's probably that's a lot to answer, but like we're because you're free. I
I was
tell people
free.
it's like all of a sudden you're swimming in a sea of truth, and you can go any
Yeah.
direction you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, oh, which direction do I choose? And you're frozen by the
Yeah.
choice. You're frozen
Hmm.
by the choice because you've never had this much choice before. Right.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So, um, at first I kind of hid from it for a while.
Hmm.
I just was like, I'm not even going to think about it. And what ended up being a benefit was I was on the other side of the world from, my family or anyone who would really try and, immediately pull me back in. So I think I hid from it for a while. I just wanted to kind of figure things out for myself. I wanted to kind of try drinking coffee and try a sip of alcohol and maybe attend another church. But I just got really curious with other people. I started
Hmm.
talking to so many other people about what they believe in. Why do you believe that? What's the history of that? I got super curious and tried to approach it all without judgment. But
Hmm.
really also I focused on, okay, what does this mean for me as a mom now? Because I felt like I just blew up my whole moral compass. But I was like, that doesn't mean I'm an amoral person, right?
Sure.
Right. And so I have to figure out what this means because I was living by a blueprint that was given to me. I was using the moral compass that was given to me. So I need to be able to make my own. And so I focused a lot on my kids and without really having the big conversation of like mom has left the church, it was more like what we did was we got the kids together. This was kind of the first step within the first couple of months. We got the kids together, and at this point, my husband was still sort of in the church, like he hadn't officially left yet. But we wanted to create a family mission statement because we thought, okay, let's come up with something that can help guide us as a family moving forward. That like, what are the values that we have that can help us to know, how to make decisions in the future. And so we talked to the kids about it and we said, come together, let's share your ideas about what makes a good person. What are some character traits that would make you, you know, a good person? And so they did. So we all came together and we created this mission statement on the values that were common that we all had. And like there was, honesty and kindness, and one of the ones that was my favorite was choose what you believe and allow others to do the same.
That's cool.
That was my favorite part of the mission statement. And I just felt like that was so empowering because it gave them the freedom to choose what they wanted to believe, but it also released them from judgment of others, right? As because if they're
Hmm.
not in turn judging other people for their beliefs, then they're not going to necessarily be worried about what other people think about them. And and then we painted it into a family mural with all the different sayings on it, and like that was sort of like my declaration of like independence as a mom and autonomy as a mom, and we can move forward without the teachings of the church, and we can still be good moral people but based on our own terms.
What a cool thing. Like, seriously, like to bring your kids in with this, bring it as a family. I think that's such a cool action. I mean, I want to do it.
You should, everybody should.
Yeah, like because I think it's challenging with kid. Like, how do you navigate this with kids?
Yeah.
How do my kid has already asked me like, why did Jesus die? And
Mm.
what is God? And I think the less I shy away from that, the better. The more, my kid is 7, so there's our conversations are going to be different than when they're like 16, when he's 16. But I don't know, bringing them in
Yeah.
gives them such empowerment in this,
It
you know?
does. And I think, if you share it as, this is the story of Jesus and this is what some people believe, and then you turn it and say, what do you think about that?
Hmm.
And don't, let them decide what they think about that. Let them decide if they think it's true and in a path they want to follow.
Hmm.
Like I love that my kids know about every different religion, and we have
Yeah.
presented it all as this is a belief system, and here's another belief system, and here's another belief system. What do you think about that? And sometimes they have really quick reactions of like, no, I don't believe that, or like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting, I want to know more. But they're very
Hmm.
open to different beliefs because we present all of it like a possibility.
Yeah. Which is great. It's a great perspective for kids, you
Yeah,
know?
it really is. And it starts to take away that pressure to be one way, to believe one thing, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that's one of the best gifts that I gave my kids. And when I first walked away, that was the gift I wanted to give them, was the freedom to choose what they wanted to choose, and then for me to be okay with it even if they chose to go back
Hmm.
to Mormonism.
Sure.
And that one took the most healing because that was what
Of
I had
course.
emotional scars from. And so I
Hmm.
had to be, if they said, hey, I want to go to church, with Nana and Grandpa, I needed to be okay with it.
Hmm.
But that took many years to come to that level of healing. But truly, if I want those who are still in the church, family members and friends who are still in the church, to give me my autonomy and respect me for my decisions, I have to do the same,
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned in my healing journey, there's a saying in NLP, which is the type of coaching that I do, that perception is projection, which basically means something has to be within me first in order for me to recognize it in someone else. And so
Mm.
if I'm seeing like a family member pull away or a family member not agreeing with my lifestyle choices, there's something in there in me first that's maybe not agreeing with them, or maybe I'm also pulling away. And that's how I can recognize that in them.
Hmm.
Right. And so that that level of self-awareness comes after being really secure in who you are. Then you can start to go, now what does this mean about my relationship with others?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's a mirror in some sense,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for sure. And so
Hmm.
like if I'm feeling emotionally triggered by someone, that it's because it's triggering something within me. It might not necessarily be their intention, but there's something in there. There's some kind of a belief about myself, some kind of a story that I'm telling myself that my brain is just automatically going to. So there's probably something there that needs to be healed if I'm feeling triggered emotionally by something that someone has said to me.
Yeah. Hmm. So, like, you made the mission statement for your family, and that
Yeah.
helped you with your family.
Yeah.
What helped you besides that? Like, what are the teachers, books, like what?
Yeah. I actually, um, like I said, I dove straight into my kids first and I didn't really dive into myself for a long
Hmm.
time. And then it wasn't until about 8 years after I left the church that I really started to have this awakening of like, wait a second. I'm I'm in this life that was created by 20-year-old Audra, who was young Mormon Audra, who got married young, who started having kids young, who chose a career based on, Mormon expectations. But now I'm in this life, but I'm a totally different person, right?
Hmm.
And it was also about the time when my youngest, it was his senior year in high school. So I knew that he would be leaving soon. And so I wouldn't have kids in the house anymore. And it was like, I could I could like reinvent myself. I could change the trajectory of my life from this
Hmm.
moment, right? But, you know, I'll tell this story that illustrates the point really really well. It's a simple story, but I think a lot of people, especially women, will relate to it. So, I was in the kitchen. I was making Thanksgiving dinner for the family, and I still had these old beliefs of like, you know, it's my responsibility as the mother to make sure everybody's happy. And if people aren't
Yeah.
happy, then that's my fault. And everything must be perfect. And everyone's wants need to just be provided to them. Right. And so I'm making Thanksgiving dinner and I'm making everything from scratch and I'm making apple pie and I make the crust the night before and then I make cutting up the apples in the kitchen. And I'm finding myself feeling really resentful. And I'm like, why am I feeling so resentful? Well, I don't even like apple pie. Why am I making apple pie? Like, okay, well, I'm making apple pie because it's my husband's favorite. But he has actually never asked me to make apple pie. I'm just doing it because I feel like that's what's going to make me the good wife is just present him. Look, I made you your favorite for Thanksgiving, right? And I was like, well, I'm I'm going to make my favorite kind of pie. And then I stood there in the kitchen, mind blank. I had no idea what kind of pie was my favorite. And I was like, how can I be, at this point, I was 43. How could I be a 43-year-old woman? And I know what everyone else's favorite is, and I could make it for them gladly, but I don't even know my favorite. So that was a huge wake up call for me of I have given myself to my children and to my husband, and I have self sacrificed and I have put myself last to the point where I don't even know what kind of pie I like. And so then I went down this really deep and pretty dark rabbit hole of what I call grieving the life unlived. Like, what would my life have been like if I didn't get married at 20? What would my life have been like if I didn't have kids at 22 when I was older? What would my life have been like if I chose a different career? And one of those biggest questions that I had to answer was about my marriage. Like, I love my husband. I chose my husband when I was 20-year-old Mormon Audra. Now we've been married for over 20 years. Do I still choose him today? And it was like, if I didn't even know what kind of pie I liked, how could I make that kind of a decision? Right.
Hmm.
And I felt really lost for a long time. I felt like a ping pong ball on a ping pong table, just constantly being tossed around from one emotion to another. And I actually found a coach. I found her on Instagram of all places, but I found this coach that I stalked for a while, and she had this program that was all about whether to stay or go in your marriage.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, I got to do this because I can't stay in this place of indecision all the time. And when I first joined, I thought, oh, okay, this will be like, strategies for making good decisions and pros and cons lists. And that's not what it was at all. So this was my introduction into NLP, which is the type of coaching I do now. It was really a deep dive into who are you? What do you want? How do you even know what you want? And like learning to listen to your body, learning to tune into your intuition, learning to uncover some of those old beliefs, like the ones I had about, a good wife just provides the desires of everybody else. Those beliefs that are there running the show in the background that are then informing my thoughts and my emotions and my behaviors and my choices. And so it was really a deep dive into who I am and learning how to recognize that, learning how to trust myself again, learning how to regulate my emotions so that when I was feeling confusion and resentment and anger and frustration, I could see it as information rather than feeling
Hmm.
shame for those emotions. I could identify them and I could slowly move up the emotional scale so that I was making decisions from a place of peace, not from a place of anger and frustration. And so that was transformative for me. That was a real deep dive, a real introduction into who is Audra and how do I even figure that out? And what are my emotions telling me about who I am? Um, and then by the end of the program, I made the very clear decision that yes, I still choose my husband. I love him as more now than I loved him then, and he's still the right choice for me. And I could make that decision from a place of peace, not from being that ping pong ball on the ping pong table. So
That's
that
beautiful.
that was how I really started to dive into myself. But that was 8 years after being out of the church for 8 years
Hmm.
before I was able to really look internally.
Wow. Did you figure out your favorite type of pie?
Blackberry.
Really? Wow. Wasn't expecting that.
It's funny because so after that event, I told my husband, I was like, I'm not making apple pie anymore. I said, if you want apple pie, you got to make your own. And then, and then every week after that, I ordered a different kind of pie until I figured out what
Cool.
my favorite kind of pie was.
That's rad. Mine's coconut cream pie. I have it for my
Ooh,
birthday every year.
mmm,
Yep.
sounds
I'm a
good.
huge coconut fan. Coconut cream pie,
Okay,
coconut everything.
I'll
But it's more of an indulgent type of flavor. Like it's the only way I can describe. Like it's like a creamy, like it's oh, I love it. It's amazing.
okay.
Um,
I don't know that I ordered that kind. I'll have to try that one.
yeah, I just listening to you share about that, I think. You talked about grieving the unlived life. That is 100% something that I still deal with now. The idea of like what I could have done if I had done that, or what I could, I left when I was 27, and which feels like such a long time, but like what decisions could I have made? It's hard to reconcile with that. But
It's
also,
hard. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
it's okay. I think but also that idea of like who is Audra? I think I'm still saying that now. Who is Roy? Who am I? Like what is it that I want to do? It wasn't like I mean, it was kind of a moment because I realized that most of what I'm doing is like and it's almost like acting. I'm being who I think people want me to be. And then it's like, well, who do I want to be? And like sitting there and having that moment, like, I mean, what a powerful and scary moment to have, you know?
It's really scary. It's scary because you realize all the decisions that you've made to please someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't know what you would have made if you were just thinking about yourself, right? And
Mhm.
also the conditioning is that making a decision for yourself is selfish and that's sinful.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We could talk hours on that too,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
there's so much you have to uncover. And
Hmm.
one of the first things that I did for myself and that I now do with women I work with is let's start finding those beliefs that are there, right?
Hmm.
So first thing you're going to do is when something happens and you feel an emotional trigger, when you feel something that it might feel constrictive, like tight, like you can't quite get a deep breath, that is your body's signal telling you there's something here that I don't agree with. There's some belief here that's not mine, but it's here. And so you like recognize that and go, okay, like I'm noticing this feeling. I'm going to acknowledge this feeling and I'm going to dive into it. And so take some time in a journal to really like think through it. Okay, what is this feeling in my chest? Where is it in my body? What is the emotion connected to it? And then, maybe it's resentment or anger or whatever it might be. And then what is the belief that I have that is giving me this emotion? So, like for my example with the pie, I was feeling resentment, right? And why was I feeling resentment? Because I had this belief that a good mom has to put herself last, but yet that was feeling
Hmm.
really constrictive in my body, which means I didn't really believe that, but it was still there in my subconscious, right? It
Hmm.
was determining my thoughts, my behaviors, and then my emotion. And so once you can really dive in, and this is a process, it takes time. It's not something you can do in 5 minutes, but once you can identify the belief that's there, that's not really yours, but it's a well-worn pattern in your brain, and your brain's going to go there automatically, right? And your brain sees that belief as an absolute truth that's true 100% of the time. So, okay, let's start poking holes in that belief. Like, first, when did I decide that that was true? When did I decide that I have to put myself last? And who gave me that belief? And then you can start to see, oh, that was actually given to me from that time when I was a kid and I saw my mom being praised for always sacrificing for her kids, right? Or whatever it might have been.
Hmm.
And you realize that that belief, since it feels constrictive, doesn't align with who you are. So let's start poking holes in it. So start asking yourself, is that belief always true? Does a mom have to always put herself last in order to be considered a good mom? Is there ever a time that that belief is not true? Do I know someone who I think is a good mom who actually does things for herself and then she's really present for her kids? So you're starting to show your brain evidence of when that belief is not true. And that's how you can start to sort of rewire these things is identify the belief, poke holes in it, and then the opposite of that constrictive feeling, you want to find a belief that feels open, that feels expansive, that feels like you can take a really deep breath. and it feels like a warm, cozy blanket, right? And that's when you can start to listen to your body and go, okay, well, actually, the belief of a mom takes care of herself and then she's more available to take care of her children, that feels better to me. So I'm going to start looking for evidence of that in my life so that that neural pathway can become my automatic pattern. So it's processes like this that you have to do over and over again. But for someone who has spent their entire life pushing down their own feelings, that's a very daunting task.
Hmm.
So I always say, like, start really, really small so that you can start to trust yourself again. Start with like meaningless decisions, like, which route am I going to take home from work today? And find the one that feels a little bit better in your body and then act on it and show your brain that you can act on those feelings. And then as it becomes familiar and you start to trust yourself again, you can go through this process for some of those bigger decisions.
Wow, that's awesome. By the way, I'm just I'm so into therapy and processes and things like that. But like I was, as you were saying, I was like going through moments in my head, like a specific moment in my head, and kind of like replaying that. Um, and it's just how we get all of like sorry, it was just really cool what you were saying because I think it was very practical an
Mm-hmm.
approach. I think for people who were in organizations, religious systems like we were, I think that kind of practice and that kind of therapy is probably great for all of us.
Yeah.
Just the idea because it's like, we make these stories and our realities from kids and from situations and they get like implanted and it's like a seed gets put in the dirt in our brain and then it grows and it flowers and we don't even realize it's happening.
Right.
But the power in realizing the power of what that would do to be able to rewire your brain,
Yeah.
it's it's awesome. Because and I'm just giggling because I was like, well, what would you say to someone who's in a religious system like this and they're trying to heal? I mean, you already said everything, so it's great. I just love when things like this happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it's a lifelong process. Like
it
there's
is.
still, I left the church now 11 years ago, and there's still things that come up that I go, oh, all right, there's something there I haven't healed yet. I need to dive into that belief.
Yeah, but my one of my therapists would do practices like that with me, and it was very helpful to be like, you just got to pause in that situation because your body is trying to tell you something. These moments you can use them to teach you something and hopefully
Yes.
heal you at the same
Yes.
time.
If you can take the judgment away from the emotion, that's often the hardest part. But if you can start to see emotions as information,
Yeah, most of
that's
my
huge.
practice in my life starts with it's like it feels like the first thing I'm always doing is stop judging, stop shaming. You know, you're allowed to feel this. You're allowed
Yeah.
to be in this, and
Yes.
I could teach a master class on how to shame and judge yourself. We all could, right?
Yes, if you could take away the judgment, the emotions aren't
Hmm.
good or bad. In fact, even take away the language of like positive or negative
Hmm.
emotions, right? The
Hmm.
emotions are information. And when you're feeling anger and resentment, like feel it, lean into it. Don't push it down. Don't avoid it. Feel it, lean into it, process it, and start asking yourself really good questions. Where is
Yeah.
this coming from?
Hmm. Oh, I love when I can like do that, when I can take the time. It's always better, you know?
It is. And now I've for several years now I've had a daily practice. Every morning I spend 30 minutes in my journal. And if something happens the day before, you don't always have time in the moment to like, let me sit down and write this out. But my brain knows that the next morning, if something comes up, I'm gonna work on it. right?
Hmm.
So you can kind of pause it for a moment, and it's now it's a ritual, it's a routine, it's what my body and my brain are expecting every morning, that I'm going to sit down and I have a process that I go through to kind of clear some of these things, and what are the emotions that I'm feeling that are stuck that I need to move through, what can I learn from them, what's the belief there. And meditation can be really helpful in those moments too.
Yeah. So what's it like now? How do you feel now?
Now I feel a lot of freedom.
Hmm.
I feel um, that I am the only voice in my life that really matters. And all the answers are within me. I don't have to go to, 10 different people and consult all the self help books to make a decision that
Hmm.
actually I already know. I just need to learn to tune into my body. And that is really powerful. Sometimes it's kind of scary because you kind of want to just, someone tell me what to do, please.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really powerful to approach life with freedom and with curiosity rather than with judgment and this fear of doing something wrong. I no longer have this like huge fear of making a wrong choice that's going to send me down this spiral of dramatic consequences. I often see things now as when I have a choice to make, they could be equally right choices. And then you release that fear of making a mistake. And that's really empowering to just, if you release the fear of making a wrong choice, you can just follow what feels good to you. And
Yeah.
I love that.
What would you tell someone that's, let's say they're day one,
Hmm.
they're thinking about leaving, or
Hmm.
they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, they're feeling scared. What would you say to them?
First, I would just give them a big hug
Yeah.
because admitting that takes so much bravery.
Hmm.
Takes so much bravery to say, I'm questioning and I don't agree with this and I'm scared. And and then I would say just keep asking questions. Just keep asking questions and be open to whatever the answer might be. You know, um, for your listeners, they won't be able to see this, but I have a tattoo now that's a question mark with little light rays coming off of it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And that I designed that after I'd been out of the church for many years because I thought, asking questions is what led to enlightenment. If I had never asked the questions, I would have never known my truth. So
Hmm.
just keep asking questions and be open to the answers, whatever that might be.
It's good. I like that. What was the first sip of coffee like for you? I've been thinking about that this whole time. It's so wild to me. I had a pretty decent sized career in coffee before I was a teacher. So like
Oh, okay. Well, I
so
remember as a kid, like going to the mall, going to the mall was a big thing.
yeah.
And walking past the coffee shops, like, oh my gosh, that smells so
Hmm.
good. But, but my family would say, oh, but it tastes terrible. It doesn't taste like it smells. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So my first sip of coffee had a lot of cream and a lot of sugar. And I remember being like, this is delicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like dessert in a cup.
Uh-huh. I know.
And now I can drink it black. Like, I
Yeah.
just I love, I don't know, I like the natural taste of coffee, the taste and the smell, the whole ritual around it. I find it very comforting. But the first taste was amazing because it was full of cream and sugar.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always intrigued me because one of the coffee shops I worked at first was specifically it was started by a minister. We marketed to churches. I mean, there was always Christians in our coffee shop doing Bible studies and stuff. And so it was always intriguing to listen. The Mormons just wouldn't drink any coffee, you know?
Gotta obey the
Yep.
rules. It's a test. This life is a
Uh-huh.
test. And if you drink
Yeah.
coffee, you failed the test.
Yeah. Um, well, thank you so much for this conversation, for all of this. If people want to reach out to you or they want to know more about, the NLP therapy and stuff like that, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's Mama Audra, so MAMA, mamaAudra.com. And I do one on one coaching for
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't just have to be ex Mormons, but my one on one coaching can be anyone who's left a high demand religion if this conversation is resonating.
Mm-hmm.
And then for those who specifically who left the Mormon church, I have an 8-week program called Reclaimed, which is a pretty intensive program that's a curriculum doing a deep dive into a lot of these things we talked about, and also group coaching and one on one coaching built into that program. And there's a free masterclass on my website. So if that interests you, the masterclass is the first step to the Reclaimed program. So
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll link all this stuff in the show notes for them too.
great.
But thank you so much for this conversation. I'm glad that connected with me and that we were able to talk. This is enlightening for not just people in the Mormon faith, but just I think anyone in a high control religious system I
Yeah.
think could benefit from this. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey y'all, thank you for tuning into this episode of Clemens with a Z. Your support means the world to me and helps keep these important conversations going. I also want to thank Audra again for sharing her story and her work with us. If you're a former Mormon, especially a former Mormon mom trying to reclaim your identity, trust yourself again, and figure out what life and parenting can look like outside the church, you can connect with Audra at mamaaudra.com. There, you can learn more about her Reclaimed program, one on one coaching, and her free monthly cozy chats, where former Mormon moms can connect with people who understand what it's like to heal after leaving the LDS church. She offers a free masterclass called Five Shifts Every Former Mormon Mom Needs to Make. You can find Audra on Instagram at Mama Audra Official. I'll include all of these links in the show notes. And again, if you were a member, are a member, or know someone who is a member of the ICOC or the ICC and would like to share your story about life in and out of the church, I'd love to hear from you as well. Together we can continue exploring the question, we were in a cult, and perhaps find some healing along the way. You can reach me by email at clemenswithaz@gmail.com or send me a DM on Instagram at the Clemens with a Z podcast page. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It helps more people discover these conversations and find stories that may help them feel a little less alone. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can find the link to my GoFundMe in the show notes or at the Clemens with a Z Instagram page. You can also head over to clemenswithaz.com and grab a sticker or something cool from the shop. Every little bit helps keep this conversation going, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. So until next time, take care of yourself, stay grateful, and keep growing. Peace.